Hello YouTube, I am Vince White. I'm an employment attorney. On this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney. But not today. No, today we are addressing the Freelance Isn't Free Act in New York State, which goes live on August the 28th of 2024. And instantly, many of you are going to say, well, I don't live in New York State, so this content doesn't matter to me. But I disagree, and here's why. You may recall on this channel, back in the past 2 years, I forget when, California passed a law addressing freelance work and trying to extend protections to freelance workers. And that law was very poorly drafted. It was in fact created by morons. And many freelance organizations like the Writers Guild of America and various trucking institutions and freelance truckers, I believe some longshore people, and a variety of others opposed that law bitterly, and had protests and engaged in a variety of actions to oppose that law because it had vast and wide-ranging unintended consequences that hurt many freelance workers who had a great deal of negotiating power and strength in their relationship with their employers, while also failing to help freelance workers who had a very weak position of power with their employers and were actively being downtrodden, right? So that law was ineffective and horrible, and the people who created it should be cast into the pit of Moria. But I digress. New York State has now learned, we hope, from that law to some extent. And they have riffed on that law, taking some of what worked and some of what didn't work, unfortunately. And then they also riffed on the New York City law. And so New York State is rolling out a freelance protection law that we hope is better than the California law. And we hope is at least as good as the New York City law, which has gone fairly well. And the reason this matters to you, even though you're in neither California nor New York State, potentially, is that the rest of the country will watch what New York State does. And they'll pick and choose what works, leave what didn't work, and roll out a rather popular protection for their workers, probably right before it's time to get elected. And that law will probably be better because they were able to watch what went before and what worked and did not work, right? Okay. That's why this matters to you even if you're not in New York or California. So, quick note. I believe these are legislative notes. They were sent to me by a retired attorney, and I believe that's what I'm reading. If they are not, if they are content that someone created, please let me know. I'm not trying to steal your content. I will backlink. I will attribute. I will take the video down if that is your preference. But I believe this is either that attorney's notes, he's rather swell, or the legislative notes. Either way. Let's see here. The Freelance Isn't Free Act will protect freelance workers by establishing a right to a written contract with certain terms, timely and full payment, and protections from retaliation and discrimination for exercising these rights. Oh. The Attorney General can bring actions to obtain remedies, including damages and civil penalties on behalf of freelance workers. Here's where that sucks. That language. So first off, the Attorney General's office in New York State is not fantastic. Think of it more like a political entity and less like a agency that does things. Now, worse, that language, the Attorney General can bring actions to obtain remedies. They can. Will they? Probably not. At least not too often. Not if you don't have press on your case, or maybe you can help the Attorney General's career, politically speaking, or, you know, you get the gist. But that's okay to an extent because it goes on. Freelance workers would also have the right to pursue a private lawsuit to protect their rights under the new law. Tremendous. And that right exists in New York City already to a certain extent, where freelance workers, independent contractors, have the right to bring private lawsuits for discrimination in the workplace, sexual harassment in the workplace, under the New York City human rights law. So this is good that this is now being extended to the rest of the state. It's really positive because you can go hire an attorney, and theoretically that attorney will probably work on a contingency primarily, and you can bring your case and actually do something here, even if you can't get the Attorney General to pay attention. Broken down under the Act, a freelance worker is any person or organization of no more than one person. Bizarre way to word that. That is hired or retained as an independent contractor. Okay. To provide services valued at $800 or more. Okay, so that right there, the $800 or more, I suspect was a lobbying effort from entities like Lyft, Via, Uber Eats, all the food delivery apps. You know, like probably they were taking a lot of care to pump up that value of services provided and get it high enough that this law wouldn't necessarily attach to many or most of their workers. I could be wrong. That's just my guess. When I see that service limit at $800, that's like you have to provide services worth more than $800. Instantly, I want to know, like, well, how long do you have to work for a company as an independent contractor to get to the $800? Is it like per individual service, or is that in total? Is that in aggregate? Even then, a lot of the workers for a lot of those entities would not work for those entities for a long period of time, so they probably might not qualify for the protections of this law. And yeah, that feels a little bought and paid for, but whatever. I mean, it's politics, right? Going on, it does not matter if the individual hired performs the work under their individual legal name, a corporate name, or other entity, or a trade name. Okay, whatever. The Act has only 4 narrow exemptions to the definition of freelance worker. The following individuals are not considered freelance workers for purposes of the Act. Attorneys, or any person engaged in the practice of law. That's fine by me. I mean, it's to some extent a weird exemption, but I'll say this. If you're an attorney and you can't defend yourself when you're engaged in independent contract work, you deserve what you get. So I'm fine with that. Licensed medical professionals. That's weird. Kind of feels like private equity paid for that one after they bought up all the hospitals. Why would we not extend protections to licensed medical professionals who freelance when we need more licensed medical professionals? Desperately. That seems weird. Seems like someone paid for that. Sales representatives don't receive the protection of this law. Huh. That's a weird one. Why would sales representatives who work on an independent contractor basis not have protections? That one feels a little bought and paid for. Interesting. And the last exemption is construction contractors. And the vast and unknowable expanse of unpaid construction contractors is one of the great horrors of New York, and is a contributing factor to like New York State not being able to get any public projects done in an efficient or affordable manner. There's a reason why the same project in France, which is a land of tremendous employee rights and very activist workers, cost a fraction of what it costs in New York City. A fraction. And let me note that New York City, they do not have the same level of historic sites that, say, a France or England would have, right? Because we haven't been here as long. So it's not like we uncover historical sites every time we do a public work. It's not like we uncover 3 layers, 4 layers, several millennia of historical sites every time we do a public work. And yet somehow we manage to cost hundreds of millions, if not billions more than the same kind of construction across the pond where the workers are treated better. Strange. Anyways, the Act includes 4 key requirements: a written contract, payment of compensation on a timely basis and in full within 30 days, if not otherwise specified. So, I mean, that's kind of bullshit because you have a written contract and they're going to specify whatever payment interval they want. So it's like you have to pay within 30 days unless you say otherwise. Okay, well, we now have to have a written contract, so we're going to say otherwise. Okay, cool protection, man. Record-keeping requirements and anti-discrimination. The anti-discrimination is good. No question. I mean, you want the protections against discrimination to be extended to independent contractors. That's really valuable. No question there. Is it a good law? Is it a step forward? Yes. Unquestionably, I think it's a good law. I think it's valuable. I'm glad it's been put into place. Am I critical of many features of it? Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's New York. I mean, it's dirty as fook, right? I mean, it's just, there's no politician in New York that you can look at and be like, that's a good person. ever. But I mean, how many can you? Like, you know, like Bernie Sanders. I often disagree with Bernie Sanders. Do I think he's a good fella? Seems like it. Seems like a good boy. I don't know. Just seems like a nice guy. Think he's wrong a lot, but you know, seems sincere, right? You don't get a lot of that in New York. That's pretty rare in New York. A lot of cynicism here, a lot of cynicism in New York. So, whatever. I'm excited about this law as a step forward. I'm not going to call it a micro step forward. It's a little bit more than a half step forward. It's something. It's meaningful. It moves the needle. So I applaud those involved with it, even if they are perhaps bought and paid for in a couple of those provisions. And I applaud them for being expensive on the other provisions. At least you were sufficiently expensive when you were bought and paid for that some of the stuff got through because nobody else wanted to buy out the other provisions. That's progress for New York. Anyways, like, subscribe, comment down below, share the channel so it will grow. Happy to discuss this law in the comments. Love to hear what you think. Take care.